Hello. In this tutorial we'll discuss calibration of the OilWatcher Benchtop Oil and Water Analyzer brought to you by Clearview Sensing Incorporated. The needed supplies for the calibration include your OWB, hexane, standard jars, cuvettes with caps, your beaker, a sample of your oil, your micro pipetter, disposable pipettes, and gloves. All of these supplies, other than hexane, are provided with your purchase of OWB in order to simplify your calibration process. Now let's take a look at the steps for calibrating OWB. In this first step, I'll use one of the 10 milliliter disposable pipettes and the beaker included with your OWB accessories kit to measure 10 milliliters of hexane into each of the standards containers. It's important to be as precise as possible in your preparation steps in order to maximize the accuracy of OWB when analyzing samples for oil content in your future applications. When all of your standards containers have hexane, you can move on to the step of making standards with your particular type of oil. Oil can now be added to each of the standard containers using the micro pipette included in your kit along with pipetter tips. Also included in the OWB user manual is a sample prep spreadsheet, which gives volumes of oil to be added to volumes of hexane in order to get specific oil concentrations for calibration. An easy conversion to remember, though, is 1 microliter of oil added to 10 milliliters of hexane gives a 100 ppm standard. It's helpful to label the concentration of each standard by writing on the container with a Sharpie. Standard containers can be washed with soapy water and the included cleaning brush, and the marker washes off easily. There are a few notes on the use of the micro pipetter. First, the tip of the pipetter should be drawn along the edge of the oil container. Next is that there are 2 depression points. The first depression of the thumb is used for sample extraction, and the second, full depression, is to eject the sample. Finally, a few full depressions on the pipetter should be done in the hexane in order to get all of the oil out of the tip. The standard containers should now be vigorously shaken for 2 minutes in order to fully distribute the oil into the hexane. With the standards prepared, we can now insert each into the OWB to build the calibration file. The first standard is 0 ppm or pure hexane. The hexane should be inserted into a cuvette and the cuvette inserted into the cuvette cell of OWB. It's sometimes helpful to wipe off the outside of the cuvette if any particulate is seen. It's necessary to cover the cell with the cap before beginning to add the calibration point in OWB. Upon startup, the tablet will automatically connect to the OWB's Wi-Fi. VNC Viewer can then be used to connect to the OWB user interface. Once the system clock is confirmed as correct, OWB will prompt for a warm-up sequence. please click Yes to warm the unit up. Calibrate can now be selected. Notes on calibration will appear with important information. A new calibration file can be created, or points can be added to a previous calibration file. The keyboard function in the upper portion of the tablet screen must be selected to enter a calibration file name. This sometimes shifts the positioning of the screen, but the arrow can be scrolled down to bring back into focus the calibration file name slot. Please enter the desired name for your calibration file. Scrolling up, a description can be added for the OWB calibration file, such as the date or the oil type. The calibration value can now be entered, 0 ppm in this example. The keyboard can now be downsized. Please be sure to cover the cuvette cell with the cap before beginning calibration. OWB calibration will cycle through 5 fluorescence channels and 5 transmitted light channels for each calibration point. I'll skip forward to the end. After the calibration point is complete, the values for fluorescence and transmitted light can be seen for each channel in the upper portion of the screen. Now the next standard can be calibrated. The next standard to be calibrated is 100 ppm. First, remove the 0 ppm standard from the cuvette cell. Select the 100 ppm standard and shake it for at least 5 seconds. Using the 5 ml disposable pipette, insert some of the 100 ppm standard into a cuvette. Put the cap on the cuvette and wipe the cuvette outside as needed before inserting it into the cuvette cell of OWB. With standard number 2 inserted into the cuvette cell, the concentration can be entered into the calibration file. Please be sure to cover the cuvette cell with the cap before proceeding. Please repeat the steps for all of the standards in order to complete the calibration. When complete, press End to enter the calibration file. The calibration file will show the value of each standard, fluorescence values, transmitted light values, and the temperature of calibration. Notice that fluorescence values increase to a point, which is the peak fluorescence, and then decreases. Transmitted light values start at a maximum and decrease to a minimum. Please click Save and Use to activate the calibration file and return to the GUI. Thank you for joining us for the OilWatcher Benchtop calibration tutorial. Please visit us online at www.clearviewsensing.com for more information on our products and how to reach technical support. Goodbye.